Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jennifer Evans, and I'm a prescribed fire extension assistant at North Carolina State University. Today, we're very excited to have our guest speaker, John Stivers, talk about the role that forestry consultants play in prescribed burning on private lands. This webinar is sponsored in part by the U.S. Forest Service, the Southern Fire Exchange, and North Carolina State University Extension Forestry, and is made possible through the Forestry and Natural Resources webinars. So before we begin the webinar, I would like to go over just a few housekeeping items. If you'd like to receive continuing education credits for participating in this live webinar or for viewing the archived webinar later, you must complete all 6 of the steps shown here. You're now on step 3, which is participating in the webinar. And at the end of the webinar, you'll be given an opportunity to complete the satisfaction survey, take a quiz, and complete the continuing education form. And then once all 6 of these steps have been successfully completed, you'll then receive your continuing ed credit certificate in an email. To use Collaborate, in the top right corner of your audio and video box, you'll see the audio setup wizard. This allows you to ensure that your audio is set up properly. Please be sure to keep your videos and microphones off during the presentation. In the top of the participant section next to the hand, you'll see a little polling box with the letter A. And in just a few slides, we're going to be asking the audience a multiple choice question. So this is the function that you'll want to use to answer that question. And then finally, I want to point out the chat box. Feel free to use this function, but if the chat says supervised, just be aware that the presenter and all of the moderators can see the messages, even those marked private. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself now in the chat box, feel free to write your name, where you're from, and maybe what organization you're here with. And this is also the box that we're going to use for questions. Feel free to type your questions and any comments into the chat box throughout the presentation. And I'll be writing these questions down as we go along and make sure that John has an opportunity to answer them at the end of his presentation. And you can also use this chat box for any technical difficulties you might have, and I'll try to answer them for you in the chat box. So now I'd like to take this opportunity to share just a little bit of information about the Southern Fire Exchange. The Southern Fire Exchange is a regional program for fire science delivery in the Southeast, and it's funded by the Joint Fire Science Program. Their mission is to increase the availability and application of fire science information for natural resource management and to serve as a conduit for fire managers to share new research needs with the research community. I'd like to point out that this webinar is the first of a 5-part prescribed fire webinar series that we're doing. We hope that you can join us for the other webinars listed here too. But if not, all of the webinars will be archived, so if you can't participate in the live webinar, we hope that you'll come back and listen later. And the best way to stay connected with the Southern Fire Exchange is by joining their email list or following one of their social media channels. And for more information about them, you can visit their website at www.southernfireexchange.org. So before we begin the webinar, we're interested in knowing who is participating in our audience, since the Fire Exchange intends to reach both fire managers and fire scientists. So using the polling box that I showed you earlier, which is the box with the little the A around it, we'd like to ask you, how would you describe your current role in regards to fire? Would that be A, fire manager or practitioner, and this would also include landowners and forestry consultants, B, fire scientist or researcher, C, student, or D, other. So we'll give everybody a second to respond here. So we still have some answers coming in. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and publish our responses now to see who's on the call with us. And it looks like most of our participants today are fire managers or practitioners, but we also do have a few students and researchers as well. So we'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. And now it's time for our webinar. Today's speaker is John Stivers. John has a bachelor's degree in forest management from the University of Arkansas at Monticello. John worked for the U.S. Forest Service for 23 years in Arkansas, Alabama, and Georgia, performing all aspects of natural resource management. In 2002, he started work as a consultant forester and performs an array of resource management services for approximately 30 clients in Alabama and Georgia. We are happy to have his 32 years of experience with the prescribed fire, timber management, and silviculture today. So welcome, John, and I'm going to go ahead and hand the microphone over to you now.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to share from my perspective as a Association of Consulting Foresters role for assisting landowners for burning on private lands. As we know, we do a good bit of burning in the southeast, but we can always do more, and really the gain, the increase in prescribed fire in the future is going to have to come from private landowners, since that's where the bulk of the landscape is at. So I just wanted to share some perspective. The first thing I want to do is just kind of get you to think about, what is prescribed fire, and there's, several definitions, but this top one is a very short, concise, and can reach just about everybody, from the general citizen to the person that understands the science. And this is one of the talking points that we want to make sure is used when we talk about prescribed fire. Basically, we want to emphasize that it is a safe way to apply a natural system, a natural process that ensures ecosystem health and reduces wildfire risk. That says a lot in a very short way. The next part, and I won't read it to you, but this is more of a legal definition, and a little bit later we're going to talk about some right to burn laws and liability and some of that stuff. So it's important to understand what prescribed fire is in a legal definition, because I know that's one of the constraints that keeps people from doing burning or doing much burning, is they're concerned about liability. So the second definition's important as well. Of course, a lot of different applications of prescribed fire. This is kind of what we think of as practitioners. It's set under controlled conditions to achieve a certain result. And I also like to use this slide because it really, to me, from what I see as a licensed forester in Alabama and Georgia, these types of stands, these young pre-emergent stands, loblolly slash, shortleaf pine, and including longleaf, there's a huge amount of pre-emergent pine out there that is not treated with fire. And I personally love to put fire in a stand as early as I can. I typically burn stands when I don't really go by age, but as soon as they get 12 to 15 feet tall and maybe a ground line diameter of 2.5 to 3 inches for non-longleaf species, I'm going to put a match to it, because I like to get these fuels reduced early to encourage some ground cover and reduce wildfire risk. So again, this is a lot of ground that could use fire that's currently a lot of people aren't touching. They'll wait till the stands are 15 or 20 years old, and I believe you can start burning most stands when they're anywhere from 5 to 6 years old. So this is a real opportunity. The next thing I wanted to mention, again, what I just call resource objectives for prescribed burning. Another way of thinking this is, why do we burn? A lot of times people might ask, well, why do we do this? And again, there's a lot of different purposes. And again, these are from my perspective as a consultant when I talk to landowners and give them things to think about where I see opportunities to achieve their objectives. And this first category, again, is very underutilized. I call it just pre-marking burn. Before I cruise a stand or do a first thinning, if it's a free thinning, an operator select, whatever you want to call it, or you're going to mark cut trees or leave trees, anytime you're fixing to have a timber sale activity, I like to burn the stands first, because again, it will reduce fuel, it'll open up stands, it makes the site a little bit cleaner, you can see the ground, the guys on the machines doing the cutting and skidding, anything you can do to improve their visibility and access, they'll do a better job, particularly on an improvement cut or a first thinning. So Again, pre-marking, burning is underutilized opportunity. And a lot of these are dual benefits. You know, you can burn for pre-marking, you're getting a hazard fuel reduction benefit as well. The next two are kind of interchangeable: control of undesirable species and timber stand improvement. These are types of burns. Again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because most people are practitioners and they get it. But these are underutilized categories. Another thing I always like to say is, you know, every day is a burn day. Get people challenged to think outside the box and realize that there's just about every month out of the year there's an opportunity to achieve a resource objective. And typically for control of undesirable species, that often means growing season, warm season burns, particularly late in the year, August, September, October windows. Timber stand improvement could be something as simple as having a 2 or 3 year old stand of longleaf pine that's starting to have a lot of loblolly and encroach on it. And, you know, the resource objective is to rogue out the loblolly. So you might, you know, want to send a screaming head fire through that young stand to keep the loblolly burned out without impacting the longleaf. So that's a type of timber stand improvement. Thermal thinning, reducing pine stocking in young stands, things like that. Obviously, site preparation for natural or artificial regeneration is a big category, and hazard fuel reduction. These are probably the two categories that the bulk of the dormant season prescribed fire-treated acres in the southeast fall into. Threatened, endangered, and species habitat improvement, whether it's plant or animal. Wildlife habitat improvement, burning to improve habitat for quail, deer, turkey, and other terrestrial species. Some insect and disease control. Getting rid of some logging debris, whether they're piles or windrows. Range improvement for some that are looking at having some dual benefit of timber and forage for cattle or horses. And aesthetics, as well as restoring certain ecosystems, whether it's pitcher plants or wiregrass, things like that. So these are kind of the general categories of why we burn, or resource objectives. As a consultant, these are things, and most people, you know, I'm preaching to the choir, but these are things I like for people to think about. Here's the types of services we can offer to help a landowner, you know, push the project across the finish line. And the first one, obviously, is locating fire lines. Now, that may sound real simple, but particularly in areas that haven't been treated with fire, and most of my clients have used fire, but it's always the first time, and sometimes that's kind of a big deal to go out there and scout and locate and flag, not to make sure you're clearly on the right property, but you want to get the lines in the right place so you don't cause resource impact. And a lot of times the landowner might say, well, you know, I want you to do the burning part, but I'll build the lines. And so we just like to be able to let them know we can offer all of these services, starting with locating line. Secondly is, where are you going to put the line? Are you going to use any natural features, any streams? Are you going to use wet lines? Is it going to be a constructed bulldozer line? Can you use blowers to, you know, blow out litter out of leaves and trails? Are you going to disc line, or is it going to be hand scrapes? A lot of different types of line. And again, you know, you should use the whatever type of line and standard is necessary to hold fire inside your project area. And that might be, you know, a simple scratch line, or it might be 3 blades wide. You know, it depends. But you just want to use the minimal amount and put it in the right spot to mainly, you know, reduce these impact. Another service that consultants can and should provide for their clients are notarized prescribed burn plans. And this kind of gets into a little bit later, we're going to talk about the liability issues and protection under the right to burn laws. It's got to be done that way to be afforded that protection under the law. But it's also, the professional and the right thing to do is to just prepare and document your burn plan. And we're going to cover a little bit more on that. And then obviously executing the prescribed burn and maybe doing some follow-up or monitoring. So this range of services are real opportunities for clients to deliver good products to their clients. Here's obviously a visual example. You can see the tall sage is kind of bent over a little bit. The smoke is pinned to the ground somewhat. It's a fairly a decent eye-level wind speed. But this just shows a nice fire line. It's just been burned. It's easy to patrol. The line's on a ridge top. Not much stuff as far as mop-up goes in light fuels, but this just kind of shows it all. The type of line, the location of the line, and again, you want to do it to mainly hold fire inside your project area. Right, clearly there's some considerations the consultant should include if you're going to include fire as a service in your bag for landowners. And again, these are my opinion. I personally think it's very important to be certified in whatever state you're going to operate in. I do a good bit of burning, 20 to 25,000 acres a year in Georgia and Alabama. So I'm a member of Georgia and Alabama prescribed fire councils. I'm also a certified prescribed burn manager in both states. But again, a lot of that comes towards the liability that we'll speak on in a minute. But you know, I think it's just important to be as professional as you can and be a member of these type of groups. The other thing you want to be able to show, obviously, is your insurance certificate covers smoke and prescribed fire, whether you have escapes or damages, things like that. That's very important, obviously. You want to become familiar with cost share opportunities for your clients that include fire lines and burning. A lot of times, there's all kinds of cost share opportunities out there, and the more you know about that, the more you can intelligently talk to your clients and let them know that that opportunity possibly is out there if they qualify. I also believe you should develop your own specific burn plan format. Nothing in the law says it's got to look a certain way. Now, there are minimum standards that we'll talk about in a minute under liability protection if you're going to do this, but you know, each burn is separate and unique, so your burn plans need to be fluid and dynamic as well. In this day and time, if you're not familiar with some mapping software, GIS type systems, they can make your job much more efficient. It's very professional looking, and you know, the days of just drawing maps by hand are kind of past. So if you want to get into this end of the business, it's very important to get familiar with that. And also, I think it's real important as a consultant as you consider including prescribed fire or increasing that service to your clients, that you consider, again, think outside of the box. I do this quite a bit in Georgia and Alabama. I'll utilize volunteer fire departments to be visible, just because I know everybody's got a cell phone, and to limit the calls that will come in. Some extra eyes on the burn. It's just mainly visible for the public, so the public's not thinking it is some uncontrolled fire. And again, make a donation. They appreciate it. They're glad to come out and help. And I also use off-duty sheriff deputies in some counties to get the motoring public. They may not respect my signs that I have up about prescribed fire ahead, etc., but if they see a cruiser and blue lights and a peace officer, then they'll slow down. Also, you know, like to encourage people to, as consultants, to get as much experience and confidence every opportunity you can. You know, burning is an inherently dangerous business, and if you don't get a knot in your stomach every time you get ready to drop the match, there's something wrong with you. I've been doing this 32 years, and I respect it. I understand it. I'm confident and very experienced. However, I respect it, and I just want to make sure I continue to gain as much experience as I can. You should always be on the conservative end. Don't be too aggressive. If you live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. Be conservative and be professional. Again, good fire lines in the right location will mitigate most problems. I've known a lot of people that's had autos, and a lot of times it's from inadequate fire lines or lines that's just not in a good spot. So if you start with good lines, do mop up as you construct lines, take down snags, push fuels back away from the lines, just simple prevention that can save you a lot of grief. And then, particularly as a consultant, you want to deliver high quality work. If you have satisfied clients, they're going to want you to do it again 2 years later, 3 years later, whatever the return interval is. And then you're going to get referrals to other clients. Do thorough planning, have contingencies, break your burn blocks into smaller pieces as you prepare them. Just kind of take things down in an orderly sequence as you're doing the work on the day of the burn. Clearly have reliable personnel and equipment. If you have sorry people and sorry equipment, you're probably going to have some problems. And then lastly, take plenty of pictures before, during, and after. You know, pictures are great, and also you never know if you might need them for a record. They're good for monitoring tools, and particularly later if someone wants to allege something didn't go right, pictures are pretty easy to do. Okay, as you're developing prescribed burn plans for landowners, here's steps that I found to really help me. And again, I do this a lot. I can't tell you off the top of my head how many different burns I do a year, but it's probably well over 100 projects throughout the year. And I found that over time, these are the steps that help me be more efficient with my time. Obviously, if you start off with some good analysis with aerial photography and topographic maps, even before you put boots on the ground, that can tell you a whole lot. Again, today with GIS and mapping software, there's no excuse not to be able to pull down a county-wide photo or topo and do some analysis before you make a site visit. And then clearly go visit with the landowner and look at things such as the past fire history, if there's been any, fuel types, these other considerations that you can read. Those are very important to know because you're going to be writing a burn plan, and you want to develop your fire objectives to meet that resource objective. So you need to know all of this information, and personal observation is always better than just taking somebody's word for it. Again, you also want to see, well, what's the reason the landowner wants to burn? What's that resource objective? Because that's your resource objective, and you want to be able to write a fire objective. What kind of weather and fire outputs do I want so I know I can achieve that objective? So ask them, what do they want to do? You know, keep it simple. Just stay focused on one primary objective. Don't try and, you know, put 10 different things for the purpose of the burn. Again, offer options so you can enhance efficiency and reduce risk. The landowner might say, well, I'd like to do it this way, and you'd say, well, have you thought about if we put our line over here, if we burn to here, that could improve this or reduce your exposure here. Again, they would appreciate you as a professional to think outside the box and come up with the most efficient and least risky project for them. And help them understand the timing for treatments and issues and constraints that's specific to the burn. And again, you know, determine their interest and eligibility for cost share for the burn you're doing now as well as future burns, because often they don't know these opportunities. And as a consultant, clearly you want to agree on the treatment, timing, costs, and expectations. Have that formalized so there's no questions or concerns later. As you develop your fire objective to meet your resource objective, this is where this group of things like season, the method of ignition, are you going to light it by hand off an ATV, the aerial ignition, what type of technique, ring fire, flanking fire, etc. These other particulars on fuel moisture, flame lengths, fuel models, KBDI, probability of ignition, all of these other things, you need to understand that. Now, most of you probably do as practitioners, but if you don't, then you need to get signed up for a burn course in the state that you operate in. In Alabama, we put on 2 or 3 4-day certification courses a year, and we cover all this stuff in great detail. And when people walk away from that 4-day course, they know how to calculate probability of ignition, fuel moisture, flame lengths, spread rates, all of this technical stuff to help them better refine their plan. Again, you want to develop a written plan, have your good smoke screening done, your contact list, contingencies, mitigation. All of these things are steps that a consultant should do if you're going to provide a quality service for your landowners. I wanted to jump into this real quick. It's kind of a departure, but it does affect this topic of prescribed fire on private land with the consultant's role is the Coalition of Prescribed Fire Councils Incorporated is an overarching national coalition, and this is their overarching goal, of course, is to have one voice to help practitioners, policymakers, and regulators, as well as citizens, understand the issues that surround prescribed fire use. And they do that, as it's stated, through the mission. So a little bit later, if you've never visited this website, please take a look at it, because this is a really good group. They do a lot of heavy lifting and chase these issues that are common to all of us. This is a current map showing the number of states that are currently have prescribed fire councils. You can see the Southeast is painted in really good, and there's a few developing councils in the Northwest and the Southwest and the Northeast. But again, all of these states have individual fire councils, and the coalition kind of helps run interference at a high level, a national level, for these types of issues. In Alabama, if you've never visited the Alabama Prescribed Fire Council site, you can see the website there. Our mission's real simple, but it's hard-hitting. We want to protect as well as conserve and expand, and expand is a key word, the safe use of prescribed fire, because Alabama has a fire-adapted landscape. So that's what we are fighting like hell for our clients and for all of those fire practitioners at a state level. All right. Again, each state, most states have a certification process. If you want to become a certified prescribed fire manager, then there's a process in most states, and that's important because, first of all, you're going to be given a license and achieve that standard, and then from a liability standpoint, it will also protect you under those states that have right to burn laws. In Alabama, our certification course is a 4-day course, and I mean, it is a lot of stuff. But when people walk away from that after 4 days and take their test and pass, they've learned a whole bunch. And then once every 5 years, if you take a 1-day recertification, you'll keep your ticket punched that way. But if you let that lapse, you've got to go through it again. The main, a lot of advantages of being a certified burn manager above the liability protection is you can get your burn permits online, and this whole process is managed by the Alabama Forestry Commission. So each state's a little bit different, but again, be certified. Wanted to show a couple of slides, and this is common to most folks. These are basically impediments to conducting prescribed burns on private land, and it also fits whether it's industry land, state land, federal land, about anybody has these similar issues. Now, the ones that are underlined are going to be the top 4 that apply to the Southeast, but these are kind of common to the country. First of all of these impediments are really kind of similar to whatever user group of prescribed fire you are. As a consultant, as an individual landowner, as an agency person, they all kind of facing the same battles. The Coalition of Prescribed Fire Councils did this survey last year with all 50 states, and I think at the end of the presentation, if you hadn't seen this, you need to take a look at it. Go to that website and look for that 2012 survey, and there's some really good information in there that discusses these impediments. So starting with them, obviously wild and urban interface. A lot of people are moving out into the Tules, where we didn't have to worry too much about daytime, nighttime smoke. Now things are different because a lot of people have homes and farms out in the country that used to wasn't there. And sometimes just low priority is an impediment, and what I see when I hear that it's a low priority for a landowner or an agency, what I think that means is it's talking risk. They don't want the risk, so it becomes a low priority. They don't want to spend the money, they don't want to take the risk, so it becomes low priority. And that's a shame because there's a lot of very low to moderate complexity type burns that could be done, and people are just not even trying. There may be legal or policy issues, ordinances and local things that from a legal or policy standpoint can prevent people from wanting to burn. And then obviously liability, that's underlying. That means it's one of them that's common to the southeast. That's a biggie. Insurance is also an impediment. A lot of people, particularly consultants, say, look, I'm not getting into that game because I don't want to deal with the insurance premiums. I don't want to take that risk. And again, there's fixes to all of these things. Public perception, that's a biggie also. But, you know, the public just doesn't get it. Why are we out there dropping the match? So we have opportunities to tell our story there. Air quality, capacity, and weather are the other ones that are the biggies that are limits to prescribed fire use in the southeast. And when it's talking about capacity with people, equipment, or training, it means really lack of people, lack of equipment, lack of training. The capacity to do more isn't there because the experienced people are getting long in the tooth. We're not bringing on some good experienced young practitioners, whether you're NWCG, talking that with the task books, etc. That's a hurdle. But again, all these things can be fixed. The weather's a biggie. Obviously, weather's a fluid situation. There's times that you just can't burn because the wind's in the wrong direction or the atmospheric mixing heights are wrong or the dispersion. And then obviously the last one is resources. A lot of times it's just limited funding or there's high implementation costs, and that's a barrier for people to burn. In Alabama, the liability protection, and it's similar in other states, but basically here's what the law says. No landowner or their agent that complies with the Act shall be liable for damages or injury caused by fire or smoke unless the landowner or their agent, the consultant, fails to act to the degree of care required by others similarly situated. In Georgia, the standard is gross negligence. So again, there's nothing to fear. If you are a certified burn manager and you do these things that's on the next slide where this kicks in, provided that you have a certified burn manager that's supervising the burn, you have a written prescription plan prepared that's witnessed or notarized ahead of the burn, you've been issued a burn authorization, and the burn's conducted to any other state laws applicable to burning, local ordinances, whatever, you can't be held liable unless you really go out there and do something, you know, boneheaded. So the right to burn law is tremendous protection. Now, you should do things professionally and be insured and whatnot, but this is a good thing to, you know, to be part of. Now, in Alabama, you don't have to be a certified burn manager in order to burn. You don't have to have a written burn plan. But if you want protection under the law, you've got to do these basic things. For a burn plan under the Alabama Prescribed Burn Act, which was done in 1995, there's some minimum standards, and again, they're pretty basic. So these next couple of slides just show whatever your burn plan format you want it to look like. Here's some minimum standards that you've got to have in there if you want protection under this law. Now I want to show just a quick example. Again, I encourage people to do their own plan. This is just a quick visual. This is the spot you can see on the east side. We have a dozer line. On the west side, we have a state highway. We have a little bit of a wet line on about a 300-acre block. So if that's the area we want to burn, and again, I use this in a GIS, then here's the burn plan format that I use. And again, it basically has everything that's the minimum standards and a few extra things. And that way, I can prepare these burn plans efficiently, quickly on a computer. It's got everything in there that helps me really think the process through. And you don't want to do these, 5 minutes before you burn. You want to try and do this, months in advance. Think about it, read it again, make sure you've got everything in there, because one day you might have somebody looking over your shoulder looking at this burn plan if you had a situation, and you want to make sure it's going to pass muster. So again, you got the landowner's contact info, where the track is, the resource objectives, specific objectives, describing the burn unit, talking about topography, fuel models, fuel loading, what kind of control lines do you have in? What are your resource needs for that burn? Do you have any adjoining concerns, special considerations, so on and so forth? And down to mitigation, this is a real key one. You just want to make sure you have things in there that in case something happens, this is what you're going to do. So if it does happen, you just go ahead and pull the trigger and do it. And you know, that's where a lot of people mess up. Things start to turn on them, or the wind changes, or they have the smoke episode, and they're reluctant to quickly do the right thing. But if you have all of this written, and you just, as the saying goes, you train like you fight, and then you fight like you train, you have these advanced contacts made, and if you have to pull the trigger and shut down a road for public safety standpoint, you know, so be it, do it. So you got to have these contacts made. Then you have things like your burning permit, your prescription parameters that's desired, as well as the day of the burn, your forecast. You have a block for on-site weather and fire behavior observations, a list of contacts, and again, the date you prepared it in time, so when you sign it, you can have your signature witnessed or notarized. And then you want to get into some post-burn evaluation, possibly with some basic monitoring. Now, there's a lot of tools out there that can assist you doing the planning and execution. And there's a lot of good ones, particularly in smoke. With this slide here, if you go to this particular website with the high-resolution modeling consortium, you can do simple smoke screening, V-smoke, or possibly run the PVP models. So there's a lot of tools out there that can help you, you know, do a little more detailed smoke monitoring for your particular burns. There's also photo series guides. Again, here's another website that these are like pictures that show fuel conditions and fuel loadings where the scientists have went out and clipped and weighed stuff so they know the 1 hour, 10 hour, 100 hour fuels, the loading. Those things are very useful, so that's a good tool to use. You obviously want to use some kind of a drought index to make sure you're not going to step on your poncho by going out and doing a burn when it's way too dry. So Keach Byram Drought Index, KBDI, is a very good tool to use. It's very site-specific, so you can look at these publications, learn how to do local calculations, or just go to certain websites for starters and look at the conditions across the board. There's also fire behavior tools. Behave is a good one. And here's a slide to give some websites, and this is where you can take things a little bit farther and actually make some runs and predict flame lengths and spread rates based on fuel models and weather inputs, so you know in advance what you could expect the fire to behave. And then this Appendix B is basically the Behave model without the computer attached. It's just a pocket guide where you can make these predictive type things in the field. Learn how to calculate fuel moistures, dial down winds, calculate probable ignition, and use fuel models to calculate spread rates and flame lengths. Then obviously you should try and record some kind of weather on the ground, use some on-site weather observations. Take time to record these observations. There's nothing that says you got to take them. Nothing says you have to take them hourly, but it's a professional thing to do to document these weather observations on your burn plan, because you might need that one day. Again, some other tools, some websites, fire weather forecasts, there's all sorts of stuff. There's no excuse for not utilizing these tools that are available. If you want to do some monitoring, you don't have to. You know, I just say keep it simple, particularly for a client. As a consultant doing clients monitoring, this isn't federal stuff. They don't need detailed information, but we want to make sure we meet the objectives. So I use this as an example. If you're going to burn a 5-year-old loblolly stand and your objective is fuel reduction, well, how do you know if you achieve that? You know, this is your plan, this is the area, here's your weather inputs, and you go out and you do the burn. How do you know if you achieve it? Well, you want to keep it simple, so you might just state that, you know, you want to reduce surface fuels by 3/4 across the site and keep scorch under 50%. It can be that simple, that common sense, but that's fairly easy to observe and to measure. So here's a young stand, and obviously we know the type of day you'd want to do this in. It's a cool, damp, overcast day, high humidity, low air temperatures, moderate to low wind speeds. Mainly we know we want to keep a flame length under 2 or 3 feet, and so we could achieve that. But by stating that monitoring, we can better visually see if we've met that or not. So again, document that on your burn plan, take pictures before, during, and after. Again, based on your fire objective, before and after burn, you know, what do you want to monitor? Don't make it hard, keep it simple. All right. This is another thing that, from my perspective, this is where I think we need to direct some research or some assistance, whether it's from the coalition, Joint Fire Science, somebody up the line. This will help all user groups for prescribed fire. We need better fuel consumption model validation. At some point, the air quality regulators are going to apply certain emission standards based on tons per acre of fuel consumed, and until we can better show them under certain prescription parameters, here's the consumption, they're going to assume every acre we burn, we're out there burning 10 or 12 tons per acre of fuel, and that's just not the case. So we're going to need that, because it's going to help give better numbers with regard to air quality impact. We need a lot more information concerning human dimensions and public acceptance, you know, how to win their hearts and minds. We need the public to understand there's going to be a consequence for not applying fire in these systems. Again, continue to refine smoke predictive models. We need to work on liability. We need affordable rates. We need the insurance industry to understand what we do and the types of risks. We need to improve on capacity, as well as continue to refine our predictive weather services. Because remember, there is a consequence for our actions, and there's a consequence for, you know, not doing the work. This is obviously South Georgia when conditions were extreme. You can see in the foreground you have seedlings, saplings, young pulpwood on up to saw timber. Stand replacement fire is not a natural fire regime in that part of the world, but that's what you'll get when you walk away and let those kind of fuel models, those southern rough systems, you know, get more than 4, 5, 6 years of age. They're very volatile, and when you get a fire on the wrong day, it's going to be a stand replacement fire. It's going to take everything out. I welcome landowner involvement. I like them to be on the burn when they're doing it, if they want to be. Obviously, I want them to understand from A to Z so they know what all we deal with. It's much more than just going out there and dropping a match. So many people think that's all there is to it. And obviously, you want them in control of the burn. You need to know where people are so nobody's wandering around, including the landowner or their guests. I like to give opportunities to landowners to get a little stick time on a drip torch. I'm not going to send them across country, but I want them to get used to that. And then give them a copy of all your burn plans and documentation. This is a client of mine in Chambers County. This is a 15-year-old stand. It was a pre-marking burn. We thinned this stand about 3 weeks after we burned it, but it hadn't been burned in 15 years since it was planted. So we let the landowner just make a little run through there, and you know, he had a good time, but it helped him appreciate, you know, why we were doing that type of burn under those conditions, and you know, he enjoyed that. In closing, I just want to share these. These are the Code of Ethics for Prescribed Burners, and this is from the Georgia Prescribed Fire Council. They have 14 canons. And being a member of the Georgia PFC, I just wanted to go over these because it kind of recapitulates everything we've talked about. And these are the right things to do. If you're going to be a member of a professional organization or you want to be professional, there should be some canons or ethical things to guide you so you can be above reproach. People respect what you do. So in terms of fire, you know, getting trained is very important. If you're not trained, you need to get trained. Be certified in whatever state that you're in. Prepare and follow your burn plan. Always obtain proper burn authorization. Know and follow burn laws and regulations in Georgia. Be a good neighbor. Notify your adjoining landowners before you burn. You don't have to, but you know it's the right thing to do. You don't want your neighbor to come home and then see all of this black and smoking right next to his property. He's going to get a little excited. Now, you're not getting his permission, but you just want to let him know what you're going to do that day. And he may not like it, but that's okay. But don't surprise him. Obviously, practice good smoke management because it's your baby from the time you light it until it's out. Minimize public impact because if we don't, we're going to get regulated. Again, be conservative. Maintain a reasonable margin of safety. Don't ever take shortcuts when you do planning or execution. Maintain situational awareness. Just kind of don't get too focused in on what you're doing. Kind of always be looking at the big picture and never fail to act. When you see something starting to happen, don't wait till it happens. Anticipate it. If this happens, I'm going to do this, and be prepared to pull the trigger. Don't fail to act when the time comes. And the last two, to sum it all up, is, you know, the public really deserves, this is the uninformed public, they deserve our highest degree of professionalism with a minimal impact of their daily routines. They don't understand why we're doing that, but you know what? We got to respect that and be as professional as we can. And remember, it's not how much you burn, it's how safe you burn. You know, everybody talks about, oh, how many acres did you do? How big was the tract? You know, it's quality, not quantity. That's the most important thing. And then lastly, you know, common sense will take you way down the path. And this is a saying I've been using for a long time. It's not hard to be wise. Just think of something stupid, and then don't do it. Now, this is a real picture. I mean, here's this old boy that for whatever reasons is burning his lawn off, and it seemed like a good idea at the time to, you know, do direct attack with a John Deere lawnmower. It's probably not the wisest thing to do. Again, be professional. Well, with that, we got a few minutes, I guess. I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer, cut my mic off, and take some questions.
Yes, John, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. So once again, for those of you that joined us during the presentation, my name is Jennifer Evans. I'm an extension assistant at North Carolina State University Extension Forestry, and this webinar has also been supported through the Southeast Regional Partnership for Planning and Sustainability. You just saw a great presentation by John Stivers, and at this point we would like to take the time left in the hour to address questions from the audience. So as the host, I'll attempt to moderate the questions that have been entered into the chat box. If you have a question or comment, please go ahead and type it into the chat box at the bottom of your screen now. And John, I'm going to go ahead. We've already had several questions from earlier in the program, so I'm just going to go through them as we got them. But first, I wanted to mention there was some discussion after you had mentioned the notary. There was some chat back and forth in the chat box about the notary process, and the question was, does the notary have to know about what is required in the prescription to notarize it? And there are several people that from different states have different rules, so just wanted to clarify that.
Right, that's state specific, and that's a good question, but I believe this is the case. The intent is for the notary or the witness is not stating that they think you got a good plan. They're basically witnessing or notarizing that you prepared, that's your signature at that date and time, and the purpose of that is so you can show that you prepared the burn plan ahead of the burn. Nobody is saying the quality of your burn plan, so it's literally just witnessing the date and time that you signed that thing, and that would be what is used to make sure somebody couldn't accuse you of doing the plan after you had a problem with the burn.
Okay, great. Yeah, we had somebody from Arkansas say that the notarization of the plan is designed to demonstrate due diligence in planning and preventative measure in the event of future liability claims. Okay, so our first question that came up was, as a consultant, if I recommend prescribed fire and flag the area to be burned, but don't actually take part in the burn itself, am I liable if it gets away?
I wouldn't think so because, you know, well, let's look at it this way. If a landowner and his agent, you know, if there's a problem, they're going to sue everybody, okay? They're going to go after the landowner, the guy doing the burn, everybody they can think of. And so you're really vulnerable if you're not a certified burn manager, for starter, or the landowner's not certified. And so if you haven't done those basic things, you know, then you can be in a legal arena. But if all you did was flag the lines and wrote a plan and told the guy everything, but you didn't drop the match, I'm no attorney, but I would say that you know, you might be named in a lawsuit because they're going to go after everybody. But I think you have very little to fear because you weren't actually doing the ignition and you weren't the one that was advancing fire across that property before you had a smoke episode or an escape. So I'd say you'd be pretty safe, but don't take it personal if you get named in a lawsuit. They're going to name everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you. Our next question is, how has the temporary government shutdown affected programs such as WIP and EQIP? And we did have somebody from the audience say, from Georgia, I believe it was, that the Farm Bill programs are on hold, but they hadn't received any specifics yet. Do you happen to know, have you had any experience with that in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I've actually got...
The last week?
I've got quite a few invoices I'm ready to submit for constructed fire lines on projects that are, you know, we have contracts on for WIP and EQIP. It's always a continuous sign-up. And so the intent is for a consultant to do the paperwork and be patient. It may take 6 or 8 months to find out that you're approved and you get funded. But, you know, go through the process. But right now with the furlough, it has affected their ability to process payments on approved contracts because I can't send my invoices. But that'll go away pretty quick.
Okay. Our next question was, who should witness the burn? And I believe this might have been in reference to your slide 27, so I'm going to try to go back to that slide right now. Requirements. All right, okay. I think it was actually, you know, probably
anybody can witness, and it doesn't have to be a notary. Yeah. But the thing is, when you're getting your signature, the time and date that you sign that, anybody can witness that, hey, Joe Blow signed this on such date at such time. It could be your wife, it could be your children. You know, it would probably look better if it was arm's length. It doesn't have to be a notary. I personally use a notary because I've got access to one that's 200 feet from my office. And to me, that looks more professional. But the legal standard is it just needs to be shown that you prepared that burn plan ahead of the burn. And so again, it can be anybody, a family member, but it probably wouldn't look as good, but it's not going to change anything. Just make sure it's witnessed or notarized.
Okay, great. Our next question is, you had mentioned the photo series in one of your slides, and so the question is the photo series sufficient to estimate fuel loading, or do you suggest taking measurements on site? And we did have somebody from the audience suggest taking measurements. What are your thoughts on that? Use it as a starting point. The question is, you had mentioned the photo series in one of your slides. John, are you still there with us?
You know, as a consultant with a landowner, I don't think we need to go to that level. We're not actually trying to show the exact consumption. There's all sorts of things you can do with nails pushed in the logs, etc. But it's like, how deep do you want? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
hello?
We can hear you, John.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. To me, I'd let the feds spend their money to get the pointy-headed science out of it. I just would not do that on private land. But the photo series guide is a good start to get an idea of fuel loading.
Okay. Thank you. I apologize to anybody if there's a delay in what you're hearing right now. We're having some technical difficulties. But John, our next question is, has anyone used the interagency fuel treatment decision support system? And what are their thoughts on it? And we did have some feedback from the audience. Have you had a chance to use that system?
No, not me personally.
Okay, we'll go ahead on to our next question then, which is, what type of staff and equipment do you keep on site during the smoldering phase if you get organic soil burning?
Well, I've been fortunate by the grace of God, and mainly just, looking at KBD, I've never lit off the organic soil, so I've never had that problem where I regretted burning a certain tract where I had to babysit it. So I don't have I can't speak to that from experience, but the point would be, to me, you stay with it as long as necessary and you do whatever you need to do to protect the public. As embarrassing or as costly as it may be, you just can't walk away from that and let smoke cause an accident or property damage. Again, from the time you light it until it's out, it's your baby. I'm lucky that the longest I probably ever babysitted a burn was probably 18 hours.
Okay, great. And just going back to the last question that I asked about the interagency fuel treatment decision support system, I did want to mention that Alan Long had said that that program has been field tested across a variety of audience but has not been released yet. So just for everybody's reference to that. Okay, our next question is a 20-acre site too small to get a certified professional to supervise a burn?
No. Now, it may cost, may be on a per unit price higher, obviously, but I would suggest to a landowner, I don't care if you're burning 5 acres or 500 or anything in between, if you don't want to do that, engage a licensed, insured, professional person and have them help you with that process. But just realize the cost per acre for them to manage that from A to Z is not going to be the same as if it was a 500 or 600 acre burn. Just economy of scale.
Okay, great. I think we do have a couple more questions, but I'm just going to ask that if we don't mind, the people who had asked those questions, if you want to email John specifically, we're running out of the time of our hour here, so his email is at the top of this slide right now. If you just want to email him questions, and John, if you don't mind answering those for everybody, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our presentation right now. So thank you so much for your presentation today, and we'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. For those of you, we hope that this webinar is useful in your fire management and fire research programs. If you'd like to hear about our future webinars and programming from the Southern Fire Exchange, please join their email list, which is shown on the slide here, southernfireexchange.org. You can also follow them on Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. And then you can also see the remainder of our upcoming webinar series posted here as well. Today's webinar has been recorded and will be archived for later viewing on the Southern Fire Exchange YouTube page in about a week, and also on the Forestry webinars portal. So just as of one last reminder, if you would like continuing ed credits to qualify and receive these credits for participating in today's webinar, you must complete the satisfaction survey that I'm about to send out right now. You must take and pass the quiz, and you must complete the continuing education unit request form and certify that you participated in the webinar. So I'm actually going to go ahead and push out this link right now, and I'm going to put it in the chat box. So we're going to send that right now, and then I'm going to push it out at the top. So be sure to click on that. And thank you again, John, and thank you to everybody who joined us today. And I would like to wish everybody
You're welcome.
great. Thank you, John. Please contact us if anybody has any questions. Have a great afternoon, and stay posted for the link. Thank you, everybody.
But I need to follow me. Don't follow me. I think you need to follow me. Don't you? Okay. Okay.
Jen?
Yes, I'm about to push out the link right now. It should be coming up here in just 1 second. I apologize. Let me try it one more time.
I can click on it.
But you can also click on it in the chat room. I think I see the problem. Okay, here we go. Thank you, everybody.